أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تعالى في القرآن الحكيم وما نرسل المرسلين إلا مبشرين ومنذرين فمن آمن وأصلح فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون قال الله تعالى في القرآن الحكيم يا بني آدم إما يأتينكم رسل منكم يقصون عليكم آياتي فمن اتقى وأصلح فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون صدق الله العظيم. The first verse which I recited translates as follows: And we do not send messengers but as bearers of good news and warners, in other words, deliverers of warnings. Then whoever believes and acts rightly, they shall have no fear, nor shall they grieve. Chapter 6, Surah Al-An'am, verse 48. And the second verse translates as follows: O children of Adam, if messengers come to you from among you, relating to you my messages, and this is of course Allah speaking, relating to you my messages, then whoever guards against evil and acts rightly, they shall have no fear, nor shall they grieve. And this is chapter 7, Surah Al-Araf, verse 35. In these verses, God explains the basic reasons why He sent His messengers. The first verse says that they came to deliver the good news that those people who believe in them and do good deeds, those people will be accepted by God. They will have no fear of what they will face in the life after death, nor will they have any regrets over the kind of life that they led in this world. And the messengers, as stated here in the first verse, were also warners, to warn people of the bad consequences of their bad deeds. And the second verse addresses the whole of mankind, O children of Adam, saying that God would be raising His messengers among their various nations with His scriptures. The purpose of sending them with their scriptures is again stated in the second verse to be that people learn to guard against the doing of wrong deeds and they do good deeds. It is commonly believed among Muslims that prophets performed miracles and extraordinary supernatural acts which no human can do, so that they could convince their people that they were truthful in claiming to be sent by God. Of course, it is believed that it was Allah who made them perform the miracles. Now, there is no doubt that unimaginable and incredible things were made to happen by Allah in the lives of the prophets at the hands of those prophets. But the question is, was it their mission to overawe and impress people by performing miracles so that people would believe them to be true messengers of God? One difficulty is that if you show miracles, if someone shows miracles, then at the most, this will only impress and convince those people who actually witness those miracles. People of later generations can only read about the miracle of a prophet. They don't see it taking place in front of them. And we ourselves only read in the Quran that such and such a prophet performed such and such extraordinary act. How can merely reading about it convince us of that prophet's truth? We also know from the Holy Quran and in fact the Bible, that all prophets faced severe opposition from their people, even though those people supposedly saw the miracles of these prophets in front of their eyes. Jesus is said to have given sight to the blind and brought the dead to life. And according to the Bible, he did this in front of the public. And Muslims in general believe this also. Now, if Jesus did this literally, he would have gained a lot of popularity and good fame among the people, and it would have strengthened people's faith in him. But when those very same people's religious leaders subjected Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, to severe persecution, so much so that they had him sentenced to be crucified, no one stood up in his support. No one stood up and said, "Look at the great works of healing which he performed, from which we benefited so much." The Holy Quran gives us some examples of both the opponents and the followers of prophets, demanding from the prophets that they show miracles. Musa alayhi salam, had saved his nation from the Pharaoh, and taken them to safety and freedom across the Red Sea. Despite witnessing this great miracle, his own followers still kept on violating his teachings, going so far as to make a golden calf, like a young cow, a golden calf for them to worship. And the Holy Quran records that they said to Musa alayhi salam, "We will not believe in you until we see Allah manifestly." That is chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 55. They wanted him to show them God face to face, right in front of them. And the Holy Quran further goes on to say that Allah gave the Bani Israel, the Israelites, shade in the hot desert, food and water, while they were living in unsettled conditions in a wilderness. This is after they had gone across the Red Sea. And all these provisions are believed to have been given to them as a miracle. But it had no effect on them in strengthening their faith or improving their morals and deeds. And again, in case of Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, the Holy Quran tells us that his closest followers asked him, the Hawaris as we call them, his closest followers, asked him to perform the miracle of getting Allah to send them food from heaven on a tray. And Jesus replied, according to the Quran, he replied to them, "Keep your duty to Allah if you are believers." Chapter 5, Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 112. In other words, he is saying that his function is to teach them to be dutiful to Allah and to be true believers, and it is not to perform miracles for them. But his people responded, these closest followers of Jesus responded by giving him this reason for wanting the miracle. They said, "We desire to eat from that food from heaven so that our hearts should be satisfied, and that we may know that you have indeed spoken truth to us, and that we may be witnesses of that truth and miracles." And the Holy Quran has already mentioned before this incident the various miracles of Jesus, that he healed the blind and the sick, and raise the dead to life. And unfortunately, people take them literally. But it seems that those miracles didn't convince even the closest followers of Jesus fully that he was true in claiming to be sent by God, and they wanted to see another miracle. This illustrates the mentality of those people who want to see some miracle before accepting the teachings of a messenger of God or a non-prophet or mujaddid sent by Allah. They are never satisfied and keep on demanding to see more. Most of our Muslim brethren say that prophets were granted miracles by Allah in order to convince people that they were not just false claimants, but true in claiming to have been sent by Allah. But as I've just shown, the Quran tells us that even the closest followers of some prophets, let alone their opponents, even the closest followers, did not acquire full faith in those prophets after seeing miracles at their hands. They wanted to see more all the time. In case of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his followers, his Sahaba, his companions, never demanded from him any miracle to prove that he was from Allah. They knew from his revelations and from his character that he was truthful in claiming to be sent by Allah. Now his opponents, the Quraysh, did demand sarcastically that he should show them certain signs. And the Holy Quran says that they said to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I'll read this obviously in translation, they said, "We will by no means believe in you until you make a spring of water gush forth from the earth for us, or have a garden of palms and grapes in which you make rivers to flow abundantly, or you make the sky fall on us in pieces, or you bring Allah and the angels face to face with us, or you have a house of gold, or you rise up into heaven, and we will not believe in your rising up to heaven until you bring down to us a book from there which we can read." And the Holy Prophet is told by Allah to give this reply, "Glory be to my Lord, am I anything except a mortal messenger?" And this is chapter 17, Surah Bani Israel, verses 90 to 93. His mission is not to show wonders to people, but to convey to them a message of how to reform yourselves. And his mission was that being a mortal like them, he must act on that message himself and set an example to people. His opponents demanded to see these things happening physically and happening there and then in front of them. Now, eventually, in fact, all these things did come to Muslims through their faith and after they had undergone sacrifices and trials. Islam spread outside Arabia, and Muslims inherited springs of water and gardens of palms and grapes with rivers flowing in them, literally. The sky was made to fall on the opponents in pieces, meaning that the opponents of Islam became helpless and powerless to persecute Muslims anymore. And Muslims did get houses of gold, and this was both in material prosperity and, more importantly, the houses of their holy men and scholars, which were full of the treasures of spiritual and worldly knowledge. And Muslims did ascend, did rise up to the sky, to heaven, in terms of their morals and character and standing in the world. Incidents from lives of the prophets are commonly related among us Muslims, which tell us of how Allah saved his prophets from their enemies by miracle. Regarding Abraham, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, it is said that he was put into a fire to burn him alive, but the fire miraculously cooled down. In case of Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, he was about to be put on the cross or crucified, but rescued from this fate miraculously. And our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Muslims under his command at their first battle at Badr had a miraculous victory. Now, I'm not discussing here the nature of these miracles and in what manner they took place. What I'm pointing out is that while people focus on these miracles, they don't turn their attention to what the prophets themselves did, which brought about Allah's help. Abraham, Hazrat Ibrahim, was willing to accept being thrown into the fire rather than save his life by agreeing to give up teaching that God is one. He did not know that he would be saved. He did not know that the fire would be cooled down for him. Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, accepted being sentenced to death on the cross rather than save his life by giving up the condemnation of the hypocrisy and evil ways of the Israelite religious leaders, which was what was offending them very greatly and made them have him put on the cross. Jesus did not know for certain that he would be saved, but he was willing to face crucifixion. And our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered the battle of Badr knowing that the most likely outcome would be the obliteration of the Muslims. But the alternative to that, the alternative to confronting the enemy in battle, was to surrender and give up Islam. The Holy Quran tells us that the messengers of Allah and their followers who were with them were tested severely. And then it says to the Holy Prophet's companions, referring to the previous prophets, do you think that you will enter the garden, the Jannat, while there hasn't yet come to you the like of what befell those who passed away before you? Distress and affliction befell them. Distress and affliction came down upon them, and they were shaken violently, so that the messenger and those who believed with him, the believers who were with him, they said, when will the help of Allah come? Now surely the help of Allah is near. This is chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 214. So it wasn't that the prophets, like in the examples I gave of Hazrat Ibrahim, Hazrat Isa and the Holy Prophet Muhammad, it wasn't that the prophets were facing these trying situations while comfortable and content in the knowledge that they would be rescued by some miracle. In the Quran, the Holy Prophet Muhammad is directed to say to his enemies, I am not the first of the messengers, and I do not know what will be done with me or with you. I follow only what is revealed to me, and I am only a plain warner, one who delivers a warning. Chapter 46, verse 9. The concern of the prophets was only with their missions of preaching. They faced these trials being prepared to meet death. Death was staring them in the face, and they went ahead to meet it. And this determination of theirs, their determination their steadfastness and willing to face whatever confronted them. This was, I believe, this was the real miracle. So these stories, instead of just being tales of wonder to fascinate us, they contain a lesson for us as well. To face the greatest difficulty in the path of our faith, the faith which we know to be true, to face the greatest difficulty, then becomes a goal for all Muslims to aspire to, if we look at what those prophets actually did. And as I said, there was no absolute certainty that they were going to be saved. They had a general idea, but not about any particular situation. So may Allah enable us to correctly understand the lives and the missions of the prophets, may peace be upon all of them, and to learn practical lessons from them instead of treating their lives as wondrous stories. Ameen. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quranil Azim wa nafa'na wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim. Innahu ta'ala Jawadun Karimun Malakun Barru Rahim.